Have you ever wondered what life was like for the survivors of the Titanic? Imagine being one of the few who escaped the icy waters of the North Atlantic. You were one of the lucky ones, right? But what if I told you that surviving the Titanic might have come with its own dark secrets? This story goes way beyond the tragic sinking of a ship. It's filled with heartbreak, mystery, and untold struggles. Today we are diving deep into the dark secret of the Titanic's survivors. What really happened? First, let's set the scene. The Titanic was a marvel of modern engineering, celebrated for its luxury and size. But when it sank on April 15, 1912, more than 1,500 lives were lost. Only about 700 people survived, and they would carry their stories for the rest of their lives. But what happened after they were rescued? Most people think that survivors returned to their normal lives. However, many of them faced trauma and hardships that many today can't truly understand. Let's take a look at some real stories. For instance, there was Molly Brown, famously known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. Though she fought tirelessly for survivors' rights, she dealt with immense survivor's guilt. She often asked herself why she lived when so many others had perished. Then there's Charles on the upper deck, who was convinced he would not survive. He had a family to think of, but when he was saved, he struggled with the memories of those who didn't make it. Stories like these reveal the burden of survival. Now let's talk about something most people don't know. Survivors faced public scrutiny. Questions about their character and decisions started to swirl. Some were criticized for taking up space in lifeboats that were meant for women and children. Others were accused of abandoning family members. Imagine having to carry that weight every day. Feelings of shame and guilt followed many survivors for years. And here's another surprising twist. Many survivors suffered from what we now recognize as PTSD. Back then, it was barely understood. They didn't have access to mental health resources like we do today. For instance, some found it hard to sleep, haunted by nightmares of the wreck. Others developed depression and anxiety, not knowing how to cope with the trauma they experienced. But the struggles didn't end there. Mysteriously, several Titanic survivors met untimely ends soon after the disaster. This led to rumors and theories of a so-called Titanic curse. Some claimed that the trauma bound them to an early fate. Others pointed to circumstances that seemed oddly linked to that fateful night. Take, for example, the story of Thomas Andrews. He was the ship's architect and reportedly stayed behind to help others escape. Years later, his name became synonymous with tragedy. Even today, some say he never truly left the ship. On a brighter note, some survivors turned their tragedy into advocacy. Many dedicated their lives to improving maritime safety. They fought for laws that ensured no ship would ever take risks like the Titanic again. It was a way to honor those who were lost. Their courageous efforts changed sailing laws, which impacted countless lives. So what does this mean for us today? The Titanic disaster teaches us important lessons on resilience, community, and human heartache. These stories remind us that survival is often wrapped in complexity. We can't forget the personal battles that many faced long after they left the icy waters. Now we want to hear from you. What do you think about the hidden struggles of Titanic's survivors? Comment below with your thoughts. Did anything in today's story surprise you? Don't forget to like this video if you found it interesting and share it with your friends. Let's keep this conversation going. Remember, every tragedy has many sides, many stories, and every survivor carries the weight of their